Good evening, everybody. This is Robin with another edition of Horror Pop After Midnight. And my guest tonight is Ash Patino. She's a writer, director, producer, and also an investigator. How's it going?
Good, good. How are you doing, Robin? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's all my pleasure. You just did a documentary called Boy Scouts Honor. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically, it's a documentary kind of outlining the history of pedophiles within the Boy Scouts and the Boy Scouts' kind of inability to tell the community about the pedophiles within their ranks. They kept the files a secret from the public, the police, and the scouts. And all they would try to do is extricate one of the people who were in these files from their Boy Scouts, but they would allow them to, of course, continue on in society. So they just would kick them out of being able to be in the Scouts. And there was a lot of problems with that. Even oftentimes the Scoutmaster would just change his name slightly and then could just sign up with another troop. So they just weren't really monitoring the pedophiles very well, and they weren't making sure that the police held them to legal action. Instead, they were just kicking them out of the Scouts.
So, how'd you come up with this project and, hooking up with Aaron Everhart, who was one of the victims who was slowly groomed and molested and then raped by, Bill Sheehan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I originally came across this story. I had been working on a film called Mallory, and the lawyer for that family had come to me, and he had just finished one of the biggest payouts on any Boy Scout case. He had just finished it, and he asked me if I would consider making this film with him. So we finally decided to make the film together, and through that process, although I do feel the Boy Scout story is important, the fact that they weren't telling the public about these pedophiles within their ranks, I always like to tell these types of stories through the survivors themselves. So I found Aaron online, and I reached out to him and asked him if he'd want to be part of this project. I always look for survivors who are ready to tell their stories. I don't want to damage someone further if they're not ready to speak out. So he was very excited because he wanted to tell his story. He wanted, to let, he always said if I could just save one kid or get one kid to speak out sooner, I've done what I wanted to do here. So it was really important for him to speak out. But what was wild about Aaron is he has this wild story that involves almost 300 victims from the same perpetrator that stretches all the way across the United States. And when I first met Aaron, I didn't even know that. And all of a sudden, I was introduced to this entire town of survivors, basically, in Foxborough, Massachusetts.
Yeah, Aaron, when I was watching, Aaron seemed like he was pretty brave. You can tell, he it kind of still bothered him a little bit. I mean, it really messed with him because it cost him to alcoholism, drugs, and, he thought there was something wrong with him because, like in the Boy Scouts, when I was in the Boy Scouts, there's so many leaders you would look up to. It's like, this guy is like really, taking a chance with me like no one else is and give me all these opportunities. And when you're a young boy, you're like a little naive because you don't know what the real intentions are or where it's going.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, these pedophiles, they're dynamos at what they're doing. I mean, you got to be so careful because you can't tell everyone talks about how charismatic Sheehan was. So it's kind of like the monster among us. And so I think what the film does really well is it's kind of a roadmap for what grooming is, what to do if you see those signs in a child. If a child themselves are watching and they're going through something, maybe giving them a roadmap for how to speak out sooner for their own sake and then possibly for other future victims' sake. And I feel like that's kind of a really good system because our expert in the film says, these pedophiles have the exact same playbook. Basically, they almost all do the same thing. It's very common. You can almost predict sometimes the behavior. So I think that it's really important for people to watch, because I think the statistics are 1 in 4 females are sexually abused as a child, and 1 in 5 males. So I think it's much more prevailing than we even know about. Even during our own making of the film, we had people who were helping us or working on the project in some way come out and tell their stories who had never spoke openly, and we're talking people in their 40s, 50s. So I thought that was really interesting, creating a community and environment where survivors can speak out, because I think by doing that we have a chance of helping the teenager right now who's going through this, or the child right now, even younger child. So
let's also talk about the Boy Scout camp, Camp Miles. He had that laid out pretty good, how had everything set up from the campsites, from the waterfront, and the certain, young boys he would targeted. I mean, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, and I think that our main survivor, Aaron, in the story, I think that's one thing that brings him some comfort. I guess the comfort might be a weird word to use there, but when he realizes the prevailing past that Bill Sheehan had, I think he realized, like, it wasn't his fault. I mean, it's like that old adage, it's not your fault. It's so hard for a survivor to understand that, though. So I think when he finally heard about his past, he was like, who was I to combat somebody who may have amassed hundreds of victims, So I think that's when he started to figure that out. He realized that he was powerless over what had happened to him. I mean, it started when he was 8 years old. And when you look at an 8-year-old, it's really kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, and then when he finally found out what was going on, he went to the police and the detectives, and told him, went in there, but he got like real hesitant because he didn't want to tell the full thing. And when I was watching, I was like, please tell him, let's get this guy. But something just triggered him not to really get into full detail. That really bothered me.
Yeah, and what's nice, I mean, that was obviously back in the 90s when he came forward to the police. I feel like what's amazing about today is we're getting better. It's definitely not perfect by any means. We have a long ways to go, and there's a lot of communities that are a lot further ahead, but we are getting a lot better about when a survivor comes in or someone comes and tells their story, about immediately getting a mental health person in place rather than having the police deal with the child victim. And so I think that's what's really amazing, is to start to see us realizing that we weren't handling as a society these cases correctly. We weren't listening to children properly, and we have to change what we're doing. And I feel like there's a lot of places that are doing that now. And I think that's so important, is, we can't change the past, but we can impact the future.
I think that's very good. They're doing stuff like that for young kids and, women and men now. I mean, because everything's coming out about the whole pedophilia. I think it's really sick, and I like where they're starting to do more things about it. It's like, it's about time, because I'm getting tired of these, creeps getting away with everything. It seems like they're getting away from the law. They'll get that close, but they'll let them go. And I'm just getting tired of all these, creeps getting away with it, especially Sheehan. I mean, the Boy Scouts protected him. It kind of reminded me like the Scouts was like the Vatican, how they, protect the priests and stuff. That's kind of remind me of. And then when you were mentioning about the Red Files, that was just very disturbing. Can you tell me a little bit about the Red Files?
Yeah, so those started, I think, in 1910, and they were called the Red Files because if you were a Boy Scout troop leader and you did something wrong, your name would go in a file, and they would put red dots on top of the files that were pedophile related, or any type of sexual assault related. You would get a red dot. And then if the goal was, then they got kind of in a goofy way called the perversion files, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And so then the problem was, though, is these very savvy. So, quite a few of them had figured out how to basically work the system. So they basically, would just change a letter of their name or drop something or change the spelling, and they would be able to get into another troop. And then I think another thing is some of these things weren't being taken very seriously, some of the complaints, because there were people who had come forward at times with parts of these stories that weren't being believed or fully believed or being handled correctly. I mean, we had an adult survivor who was about 20 years older than Aaron, actually calling the police in Fort Myers to let them know they had a pedophile in their midst, while Aaron in Fort Myers is coming forward to the cops about what's happening to him. And the cops never call the guy back from Fort Myers. And that's wild to me. Like, what were they possibly thinking? Why would they not have brought that guy in? And it's such a complicated, sticky thing to get a pedophile, actually put in jail. Because there's statute of limitations and other things. So it just makes the whole thing very complicated. And I hope we're getting better at that.
Yeah, Sheehan was getting around. And then there was another story with another character you had on there, who was a victim. It started at the school. He was like a teacher. And then they talked about the park with that building, that creepy house, with his office right there by the showers and everything. That house gave me the heebie-jeebies, man. It reminded me of like watching a horror film, with a sicko. That house was disturbing, man. I was just thinking about that. I was like, I couldn't dare to go in there.
Yeah, no, it was even the area, and even after that building had been torn down by the survivors, it's still very spooky to be in there. It's all chained off, and then there's like a swing set that's, looks like it's from the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's all overgrown, but you can still sit and swing. And so it's really kind of jarring because it's literally just, there's nothing there except this swing set, and it's like in the middle of the woods. And so it's really kind of jarring when you come across it, but it just doesn't even give you, it gives you an uneasy feeling. Like it feels like it's in, like something's not there that's not supposed to be there. It's even just in the little lake there is like black from the tannins in it. So it isn't like this really, good feeling you get when you go there. It's kind of a creepy feeling in general.
I know, I got the vibes just watching it. I wasn't there, but I was getting the vibes. And when he went to the next victim, where the young boy found out what was going on too, he was trying to escape for his life through the trail. He's like, okay, I'm getting away from it. All of a sudden, he pops right in front of him. It's like, how did he beat me? To prevent me from getting away. And what you explained in the documentary, he made it like a round circle, like the trail. So, like if the victims were trying to get away, they wouldn't get away. And then there was another scout leader, Mr. Lee. I mean, he was, standing there going, he was like so naive, man. I think he knew what was going on, but I think he didn't want to have anything be part of that. If I was Lee, I would have stuck my ground. I would have pushed Sheehan away and took that little boy away. But I don't understand why he didn't stand his ground and protect that kid.
And I had asked Kevin about that. So that was even 20 years before Aaron. So he came out, I think, in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Lee also, which I didn't put in the film because I didn't think it was necessary, but he's Native American. So I also thought about who he must have been then and if he felt like he could come forward. I just wondered, too, if that had an impact, his nationality on him. Or his heritage on him, because, I wonder, because we've dealt with racism in this country and other things, obviously. So I wonder if that made him not feel as vocal, or maybe he did come forward. Aaron does say Kevin says maybe he did come forward, but no one believed him. So it's like, it's so hard to know, like, what the hell was going on back there? I mean, it's crazy. Aaron and Kevin talk about being around other adults while they're being raped. There's parts we put in the film because it was too graphic, where there was definitely other people who knew what was going on, and it's very hard to understand how you get other people who aren't bad people, like they're not raping kids, but they don't say anything then. And it's hard for me to get my head around it because it's the time we live in now, and maybe back then it was just not appropriate in society to even say, even if someone was getting damaged. I don't know. It's really bizarre to me.
I think so. Back in the day too, I think they were scared, because people would have been judging them or be going after them or, you know, trying to blackball them. It's like, if you say this, we're going to, because a lot of people, I mean, there was like crazy stuff back then where people just kept their mouth shut. They knew about it, you know, especially, you know, like Foxborough. If you live in a little small town like that, everybody knows everybody's business, but everybody's just seems like they just want to keep their mouth shut.
Yeah, and I think too back then, even more so than what's happening now, is that it wasn't okay to probably say that you were gay back then. You know, I think probably it was society wasn't ready to hear it. There was a lot of people being, you know, bigoted against because of that. So the fact, even though obviously being gay and a pedophile have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah.
I feel like through history, though, people have confused the two on weird levels. So I think it's, you know, a lot of these young men at the time were, I think, terrified that now they'd be labeled as gay. And that's really sad that you end up having to almost stay within the abuse because you're so afraid you're going to be ostracized by society when probably most of them aren't gay just by percentages, you know? So it's like, it's so crazy over something that someone shouldn't be shamed for anyway. So it goes so many layers there.
Yeah, I think so too. So how did Bruce become part of this? Bruce Nagel, the lawyer.
Yeah, so he was wonderful. He was such a, he's the executive producer on the film. He's the one who came forward with the idea initially. And then he brought kind of all the experts. He took all the experts that had worked on his case, and that's who we interviewed for the film, even though they talk about the Boy Scouts kind of more broadly. And then sometimes they talk more specifically about his case that he had won there. So he really just kind of cared a lot about this topic. You can tell he cares a lot about survivors. He really wanted to be able to tell this story. And that's what he does as a lawyer too, also, is fight against big, you know, groups that aren't maybe doing the right thing. So, I mean, he kind of does that in life anyway. So he was just such a great support to have on the film and to be able to work with on this project.
Yeah, Bruce was pretty cool too. I mean, watching, he was a fellow Boy Scout too, which was cool, you know. He was at Life. He goes, I got Life and I got interested in girls. I like how he said that. And I was like, Bruce, you can still be interested in girls. Don't let them know you're in Scouts. Just get that eagle, and then once you're done, then go have fun and chase those girls.
That's right. Yes, I love when he said that. He got too interested in girls.
I thought that was funny. I started laughing. I was like, get your eagle. You're right there. And then go chase those girls.
Was so close.
I was at that, I was at the Life rank too. I was getting ready to drop out too, because, you know, all my friends thought I was like a nerd for being in Scouts and stuff. And, you know, I was gonna drop out, and my dad's like, you're right there. Just do the service project, get the eagle, and you're out. So I did it and got out, and I was like, yeah, you're right, Dad. I'm glad I got that.
Yeah, no, it's actually really funny because all growing up, my best friend was a male, and he got his Eagle Scout, but I actually helped him on his service project. So oddly enough, just because I happened to be best friends with a male when I was younger, the Scouts actually played a bigger role in my life probably than most females when they're younger. So it's kind of interesting. And I had a lot of fun on the stuff that I got to do with those guys.
So there was like over $800 million of settlements to the victims from the Boy Scouts. Is that what caused the Boy Scouts Association to file bankruptcy? Because they had to come up with all this money to, you know, pay all the victims?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how it works, but they really had to claim, my understanding is they had to claim bankruptcy, or the Boy Scouts would have gone under basically 100% because of the amount of the claims. And apparently when you claim when you claim bankruptcy, then you cannot continue to be sued about the specific topic. So I think that at least shut down any. Now, if new abuse happens, you can. But if it's anything from the past, you had to be part of that suit to be able to ever get money from it. So I feel like it was a move to make sure that they could stay viable. You know, and I mean, I guess there are people who have so many beautiful memories of the Scouts. It is a fun activity for kids. I mean, my hope, my goal is not that the Boy Scouts never get to exist. I would love them to to exist. I just think that if you're a youth serving organization, you need to take child sexual abuse more seriously than anything else. Yeah. And that's where I think they really failed. And, they say they're doing better now. They have things in place. My hope is that's true. It was hard, though, because I actually talked to the Boy Scouts, one of the head of the Boy Scouts, but they wouldn't go on camera. And that's basically, he was basically just stood by the fact that they had the strongest protections of any youth serving organization. And that just kind of upset me that he stood by that so strongly with 100,000 open lawsuits. But, I don't know.
And another thing I like about Aaron's stories, too, I like how he went and did a lot of research and found other victims and, got them all together so they can all heal, which I thought that was a great ending for Aaron.
Yeah, that was one thing that was really cool with the survivors is, they're never going to get justice for what happened to them, but I saw a lot of them find peace. And I think that was because survivors so often aren't believed, or they feel like they won't be believed, that having all those other people, even by the same person who victimized them, no one can really question their story. I mean, you can't believe that 50 people have come out, and they think there's up to 300, but 50 people who have come forward with almost identical stories. And what's crazy is Kevin and Aaron, the two main subjects in the film, have about a 20-25 year age difference, and their stories are almost identical. It is so odd. So this guy had a pattern and he stuck to it. It was very jarring.
I thought so too, and I can't believe it. Bill Sheehan was getting away with that, through all these years, and he was just getting like a slap in the wrist. It's like thinking about it in the documentary, I was like, man, they need to nail him, man. He's just getting away with it, traveling to different cities, especially, from being part of the Boy Scouts. He was also a teacher at a school. That's even more creepier, him lurking around with all those young children at school, too. Didn't they do, like, a background check on him or anything like that?
God, that's the hard thing, is the first kind of documented thing they have on him was Aaron coming out in Fort Myers.
Yeah.
So that's the really hard part, is even if a background check had been done prior to that, I don't know if there was ever anything that was officially documented. That's the really hard part about the whole thing. And this guy was prolific. He was, Boy Scouts, teaching. He was part of different clubs.
Yeah.
Like any child, teaching kids how to swim, like anything to deal with children, he was actively doing daily. So it's wild that his whole entire life revolved around raping children. Like it literally blows your mind when the story starts to unfold. My God, the fact that he put that much time and energy into this, and he even built a building that facilitated him raping children by making a door from his office straight into the boys' bathroom. And he used it. We talked to survivors who were a little plucked out of the boys' bathroom. So it's very unbelievable that this guy had the reign of terror that he did.
Oh, I know. It was creepy, but I'm glad they tore it down. I loved it how, Aaron and all them, you really got together and watched it get torn down. I also felt bad for Aaron's parents because they didn't know what to do in that situation, man. I felt for them.
Yeah, I think they were just out of their depth, and they were, from what I could tell, from the moment Aaron had kind of turned a corner as far as being a happy boy to being kind of, tucked away and angry, morose, I think how his mom describes it. And they were constantly asking him, what was wrong, what was going on. Like, they encouraged him to tell the cops what had happened. And then they were supportive of what he wanted to do afterwards as far as like what his needs were. Obviously he had been damaged pretty significantly, so nothing at that point was probably going to Band-Aid that together. But, they're just like every parent, you could just tell it was a beautiful, good family. And it's really heartbreaking that they stole some, Sheehan really kind of stole something from that family. And it was hard too, because Sandra passed away about a month after that interview also. So, it was hard too because, we wanted to show her the film because having had
Yeah.
that happen to her son impacted her deeply. She was a very devout woman. So my hope is, whatever happens after death, she knows that he's okay and that film tells his story well. But I was really bummed that she didn't get to see that because I think she would have been proud of her son speaking out the way he did.
How you did the documentary, it was well documented, really good. It so far this year, it's a pretty damn good documentary. I've seen some documentary this year's, but when I saw this pop up, I was like, whoa, wait a second, So I did some research and I was like, okay, who's directing this, writing this? I would love to, talk to that person. And then I found you online and I was like, I'm going to reach out to Ash. I mean, she does all this investigative stuff. I mean, from, mysteries and stuff. I was like, I wonder if she'd reach out to me. And I'm glad you did. And I also like to thank, Mitch Swan for letting me check out the screener of your documentary. And if Mitch, you're listening, thank you so much, for, giving me the chance to talk to you, Ash. So how well is it doing at the film festivals?
So it got into Portland. Portland, we applied to probably 10 there. I think we have 3 or 4 more that we're waiting to find out from. So we've got still waiting from Sundance and Slam Dance, I think are 2 of the big ones.
Nice.
Berlin also. We had heard from our international distributor that there's might be a shot at Berlin. So, fingers crossed, but Portland was awesome. We had a nice showing there. It was received really well. So, if that's in, now we come out on December 13th. So I don't know if we'll apply to any more if we don't get into these last couple. I feel like it's had a really nice, presence already. So.
Once it fully comes out, for the public to see, I'm dying to see what the reviews are going to be and what other people thought about it. I bet that's going through your head. You're like, oh my gosh, I wonder what people are going to think, because I'm going to be reading the reviews too. I want to see what people thought about this film too, and about really the Boy Scouts, and and I hope the Boy Scouts also have a happy ending too, yeah, I hope they do. I mean, they've invited girls in there. There's girls troops now too. So, I hope, BSA learned from this and, at the point now it's like, they're not going to tolerate nothing anymore and just, man up.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. I mean, I guess we can't change the past, so
yeah.
They just at least now start. You're not going to stop pedophiles from going into the Boy Scouts, but if you can at least stop it the second you know about it, and do something, try to at least let the police know or whoever, so that something can legally happen if it needs to. I think is would be amazing.
Or also teach everyone in the organization and leaders on what to do if a certain situation like that does happen and what to do in that case.
Yeah, yes, and I think too, from how the survivors described it to us, is the grooming can be kind of obvious if you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're just and that doesn't mean obviously there are adult people who are really nice to kids and they're not molesting them, so I don't feel that way, but you can at least watch out and then talk to your kid if you're nervous to make sure the relationship is just mentor-mentee and not something perverted happening. So I think that it's a good thing to kind of look at to help understand that better.
Yeah, and now you have you're doing another series. Is it called Ash to Ashes?
Yeah. So I investigate basically cold. Well, usually they're cold or closed murder cases, and we go through and look at all the evidence. It's very investigative, so we really comb through every single piece of evidence. Talk about what it means. Talk to people who are actually there that day. We interview people who are on site. Our goal is to kind of cut through all the media, because a lot of times the media just tells the 2-minute news story, what sells. So the cases can get really confusing. We actually try to solve them, or or find out what happened to the person if it wasn't a murder.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check out those episodes. I just found out about that. I like stuff like that, like Unsolved Mysteries, and I was like, man, I'm definitely checking this out. And I was like, sold. So I'm gonna have to jump on and check out. I mean, it sounds like an interesting series. I mean, look at you, you go everywhere, man.
I travel about 75% of the time. I'm usually on the road. It's kind of rare that I'm at home.
So on Ash to Ashes, was there one cold case that really like brightened your interest, and you just want to be like, I got to solve this? It's been sitting there. Was there ever one of them that's just like stuck out to you?
Oh God, the season 2 is about my aunt.
Okay.
And that was really important to me to showcase what had happened to her.
Okay.
And that was my cousin, who kind of is also my sister in a way, but she is the one who had asked me to do the series with her after she knew what kind of work I was doing. And it was a real honor to tell her name, the woman who was murdered, is Carolyn Blankenfeld, but it was a real honor to be able to tell her story and to showcase what we believe happened to her in a real methodical way by doing experiments. We actually go out into Perdido Bay with a swimmer and we reenact the events that would have happened that day. We literally talked to everybody, the people who were involved all throughout the day, the investigators, everybody. We got all of the crime scene photos crime scene audio, or like they gave us all the stuff from the interviews and stuff like that. From after she had passed away, including Chris's interview at the hospital, who was her husband, who is a person we believe had some really suspicious behavior around her. So it's just like we really dig in. We look at every single piece. We give everybody a chance also to tell their sides. It's not a biased show. We're very much just go where the evidence takes us, and it never takes me where I think I'm going to be going. So I'm always surprised at where I end up in the end. So yeah, I think that was probably one of the most important ones to me, only because it was my family.
That's pretty cool. Since you do that, have you ever thought about doing some other unsolved stuffs, like into like the paranormal?
I do like the paranormal stuff. I do think that might have always been a direction I headed if it wasn't true crime, just because that stuff's kind of interesting and fun, and who knows what things really are. So it is a topic that interests me, but I hadn't really thought about doing it just because the true crime stuff's so time consuming.
Hey, that would be fun. I mean, true crime and paranormal are a great combination. I mean, they're both fun. I mean, they got interesting stories, and there's a lot of stuff you can research. You want to know if it's like fact or nonfiction. It's like, I got to know this, man.
Yeah, well, and plus I live in a big haunted old building from the 1860s. So.
Oh, really? Since you live in this haunted building, have you like witnessed anything or heard anything or?
Yeah, it was an old tannery, and it ran along the Morris Canal, and the canal would actually ran right in front of the building. Really interesting plot. And the basement actually has stone walls.
Wow.
It's not even really a basement. You kind of walk out of it, but they would keep the animals actually in the basement. So there's definitely been some things. Nothing that was a scary energy though. Okay. But there have been some things where I'm like, that something is weird there, or just something doesn't feel right. So I definitely feel something, but it doesn't seem like a spooky presence or something that to be feared.
Well, that's cool. You live in a haunted building, man.
Yeah, it's a weird old building.
That's cool. So where can everybody find you on social media to find out what you're doing next, like your film projects, your TV series, all that great fun stuff?
Yeah, so I'm on social media too. Ash Patino, that's my name. Friend request me or follow, but it's Ashes to Ash that everybody follows. And even though Ashes to Ash is the true crime series, I also, obviously, my films are almost all true crime, so I announce them on there and I keep people up to date on there, and that's where my fan base usually lives. So if someone wants to follow, it's Ashes to Ash TV. on the social media platforms. And yeah, it's everything. I just kind of keep everything updated there.
Well, it's good. You got me hooked because I like true crime too, and I'm definitely going to check out, Ashes to Ash. I mean, that sounds good, and I'm going to spread the word on that because I have a couple friends who love true crime, and they really get into it like they think they're really part of